All right. Recording, you've all been warned now, recording in progress. But officially welcome to the Ambitious Speaker Collective. We got John DeMato with us today. I'm super excited for you guys to hear John's story, kind of his expertise and what we can take into our speaking business a little bit. A couple of quick reminders for those of you who are live, those of you who are watching. April 2nd, we got our next community meeting. April 16th, we got Holly Hoffman coming in. She's a speaker who was on Survivor years ago, but she's out there making a pretty good living doing this thing. So she's going to be with us and kind of share her insights. Eric and I were just chatting about potentially doing an ASC retreat at some point. So if that's of interest, let me know and we can have some conversation about that as well. Now today, sorry, I'm admitting people as we go here. Today, the way we're going to work, we got John for 1 hour, which is very great gift to our community. So John's going to be spending an hour with us, and then if whoever wants to can hang on, we'll have another half hour if we want to talk about what we learned from John, if we want to badmouth him, if we want to make fun of him, whatever we want to do, we can kind of
Can
do.
I be in the room for that? I appreciate that kind of.
Yeah, you can be in the room for it. If you're there, I will warn you, we may not be as honest as we would be otherwise about, making fun of you. But yeah, for sure. No, you are obviously welcome to stick around for the full 90 if you want.
Yeah.
But I know we asked for an hour, so I want to respect that as well. So with that, let's just kind of get into it. You guys, most of you have been on here before. You kind of know the flow of things. If you have questions, you can throw them in the chat, raise your hand, interrupt John, whatever. Let's just get your questions out there. This is really about your time. So John has 10 hours of content he could share with us. That's not the goal. The goal is to kind of start picking his brain, get the conversation going. And if you have a question about how to apply this to your business, don't let it go by. This is the opportunity to jump in there and ask the question. So I'll keep an eye on the chat. John, you can too, but otherwise I'll let you know if something's in there that we need to chat about. So with that, welcome officially, John. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm curious to know if you have any questions for me. Because
I
I didn't prepare
no,
anything. I mean, I could freestyle something,
yeah.
but I
No, I told you not to prepare. This group knows me. I have like 8 million questions always to a fault, and so that's why people have to interrupt me to ask questions. But I'd love to just start a little bit with just kind of tell us a little bit about who you are. Not everybody knows who you are, like what you do, and specifically kind of this journey even in your own branding. From I mean, you are a photographer, but you branded yourself sort of as a visual storyteller, and now I know you're moving more toward a visual authority architect. And so
correct.
tell us a little bit about who you are and kind of your journey and what you offer and things.
Sure. So once upon a time, well, actually, once upon a time, I was a television producer, and I used to work for a talk show called Maury. I don't know how many people these days are familiar with that
Is that
show.
Maury Povich? Is that Maury Povich?
That's the one.
All right.
And that's actually where that Viking helmet comes from. It's a long story, but I stole it from backstage a couple of years ago. So now I keep it, and now it sits here and
But you're not a
reminds me.
Minnesota guy, are you?
I'm a what?
You're not a Minnesota guy. You get the Vikings helmet though. We're a lot
No,
of us are Minnesotans, so we appreciate that.
no. I mean, you know what? Now that I just said that, yeah, I pointed
You're
that
in.
out specifically for that very reason. Yeah, I totally forgot about that. Yeah, no. Nope, New Yorker, born, bred, and currently reside. So that's where I'm from. But once I officially got burned out and hated everything about that job. And then getting inspired from the death of a parent, I decided to jump out a window, go crazy, and start something on my own. And on the side, I was a photographer, taking photos of New York City. Street photography. Eventually, that led into taking some headshots. I befriended a professional headshot photographer here in New York City, kind of joined his online group, learned how to shoot them like a professional. And then when I decided to quit, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to do this headshot thing. It seems pretty easy. And then you find out real quick that despite being in the biggest market in the country, if you don't know how to market yourself, you're kind of screwed. And I was kind of screwed for several years, trying to figure out my way and how to actually get out there and position myself as an expert. And what that eventually led to is a discovery of a group of people that actually walked on a stage and made money for a living by talking. I thought that that was just reserved for ex-presidents and Tony Robbins, and apparently I was wrong. So I kind of leaned a little bit more into that world and met a personal branding specialist who had was putting a book out. And at the time, I didn't have any of the words or any of the format or any of the stuff that I do now, 10 years later. But we're kind of like baby footing through this thing, trying to figure out together, well, what the hell should we shoot? Because I thought you just wanted headshots, which is funny now that I yell at clients who say, I want headshots. Like, no, you don't. You want branding photos, you want other images. We'll get into all of that stuff later. But that's what I said to her. And ultimately, we came to what eventually became the branding photography, which is part of what I do now. And what my job is to serve experts who speak, coach, train, consult, and write books. And what I do with them is collaborate to create images that are aligned with the level at which they operate, their experience, their expertise, their track record with the visuals that they put out there so that their visual signal matches the level at which they do their thing. And the reason why that is important is because I don't know if you're all familiar with this, but there's 9,000 people out there that do exactly what you do in their own way. And the only way to create that differentiation, the only way to create that separation and not become invisible and blend in like 1970s wallpaper in a basement is by you capturing the images that showcase who you are and how you help others. And that's what I help my people do.
I love it. Yeah, I love that so much. So the whole visual authority architect, and that's sort of what you're talking about, right? If we are operating at a level where we are claiming to have some level of authority, is that how I should interpret that? So you're kind of
It
architecting
is,
the visual
yeah,
behind that.
it is my presumption that all of you are experts and operate at a high level. And what my job is to figure out, first of all, who you are as a person, your essence, your personality, and the way you want to be perceived by your audience. And once we get that foundational piece established, then it's, well, what's in the storefront window? What are you selling? You selling books, getting on stages, online courses, communities, coaching clients, consultation, consulting group stuff? What's for sale? And once we establish who you are and how you help other people, then from that, we're able to create a game plan that captures everything all into the pot and create photos that help support all of those business goals to help put you out there in a way that supports what you say you are by showing what you do. Because without that, in this day and age, it's a way for you to just kind of blend in or just be forgotten by decision makers in the different areas in which you are looking to be hired and get booked for.
One of the things I think you did, you put a post on LinkedIn, I think pretty recently, if I remember right, like around this idea of everybody thinks we should all just have pictures of us laughing, and that's sort of what we should do, right? Is I think that was your post, all laughing and stuff. So talk a little bit about kind of your perspective on that versus, authentically who we are in our workspace. And I guess as part of that, I want to look at the question that Susie put in here, which is sort of related, which is what is the pose that speakers use on their website that gives you the ick? Like, so talk a little bit about poses that you see, poses that you recommend, how you sort of bring that into the mix.
I love that. I got some words on that one. Plenty of words on that one. But in terms of laughing, so we actually addressed this during the Minnesota chapter meeting. As a matter of fact, one of your colleagues got up and said, I have an ugly face. Do you remember that?
I do remember that, yeah. But not everybody here is part of ASC Minnesota,
No,
so
I'm going to
yeah,
set the
but yes,
stage. I
yeah,
just want to know if you remember
I
that.
do remember that, yeah.
Yeah. So, a gentleman got up in the back and was talking about how he has his ugly face when he's on stage because he's passionate about what he does, and then he looks at his colleagues and, oh, they look so cute when they're on stage. And my response was, well, are you passionate about what you do? Yes. I'm like, does that expression feel natural when you're doing it, or you're putting on it? Oh, it feels natural. Well, then ultimately, that's what you look like. And the reality is, if you are someone who makes these kind of demonstrative faces and you got your hands moving around and you're getting the vein popping, as long as your eyes are open, the shot is in focus, your clothes don't look disheveled, those are the images that you need to share with people. Why? Because the whole point of these visual assets is to give your audience a preview of what it's like if they were in that room seeing you deliver your magic. And if you don't share those things, or if you put on a show, subconsciously it's going to register different in their minds. And the truth is, if someone meets you in real life then sees you on stage and it's not the same person, they're not going to trust you. And we are in the business of gaining trust in the people that we serve. When people come across your images, let's back it up a little bit. Let's just say someone refers you, right? Or someone finds you organically. Either way, let's just say there is a moment where they discovered you in one way, shape, or form, right? Now, for some people, they feel, well, if I got the referral, that automatically is going to have them, click on my call link, and we're going to have a chat and talk more about how I can help them. But that's not the reality. In fact, I think you all can relate to this when looking up different types of experts that you hire for yourself. What is the first thing that we do when we get a referral? We're going to scan their stuff. And I'm not talking about diving into their life story or reading every single testimonial or reading every piece of copy on their website. What they're gonna do is give it the 10-second once over to make sure that they feel yes to three questions, which is, does this person look legitimate? Are they worth my time to dive deeper and figure out if, they're the person that can solve my problem? And do I trust that they can deliver on their promise? And they're getting that mostly not from the words, they're getting it from the photos. So if your photos do not have that kind of passing the sniff test type of thing, you're going to get skipped right through and they're going to go to the next person. And when they're going through that process, it is absolutely essential that the emotion that you convey in these photos are genuine to you, not putting on a show, not smiling all the time. Because the truth is, when you are doing what you do, you make all kinds of faces. I know that I look like a psychopath when I am shooting or I'm in front of a room. I saw the video of me presenting to the chapter, and my face is all over the place. And I'm okay with that. Why? Because it's who I am. And the first thing that you have to realize is, when putting out, either some people hate their smile or love their smile, or they like their mouth closed, or they like this, or they hate the left side of their face, or their ear is weird, or whatever. Get over it, because ultimately, these photos are not about you, it's about them. And the only way for them to get a real gauge into your personality, your essence, and getting motivated to learn more about how you can help solve their problem is by putting the most genuine aspects of your essence and personality out into the open, regardless of how ugly it is.
Mm. I love that, John. I've got a wife and a daughter who both claim that their left side is their good side, so they're always fighting over who gets to have that side of the camera. Yeah, exactly. Hey, so we got a question from Will and a question from Susie. If you guys don't mind, I'll just have you pop off
Do
in
you want
that
me?
order and ask your
Do you want?
question.
Do you want me to answer the ick question?
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, so I never got to that. Yes, I'm
Yeah,
a bad facilitator. Everybody knows that, so that's
so
good. Yeah,
I take notes on these things while I'm
perfect.
like I'm taking your order.
I
So
love that. Yeah, I'll take a BLT if you don't mind.
you don't want me trying to cook that. So in terms of poses that give me the ick, anything that is posed is icky.
Mm.
Long story short, in the same way that your facial expression and your body language needs to be genuine, so does your posing. So if you're in a branding session, you don't do the thing with the hands on the hip, don't fold your arms, don't do anything that it's not natural. You just need to be yourself. You need to be positioned in a way. If you're sitting at a table and you're looking directly into the camera for a portrait, as an example, instead of thinking to yourself, well, maybe if I, position my arm here and do something like this, or I got to do this or some other crap that's not natural to you, it's going to look artificial. It's going to look staged. And more importantly, it's going to be written all over your face. And that's not going to translate well to the viewer of this image. You're not going to come off as genuine. As a result, if you're sitting at a table during a portrait session and you're looking directly in the camera, treat the camera as if it was a human being you were sitting across the table from and having a conversation. What would your hands be doing? Now, in many people's cases here, like, I don't know what the hell I do with my hands. I just kind of, exactly. So basically, what you do is you just kind of rotate something, and once something feels natural, you just stop. And your photographer hopefully will guide you through that process so that everything you do with your body language and your facial expressions come off as natural as possible. Long story short, don't pose ever, 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 ever in front of a camera.
That's good. Thank you. And I see, yeah, Krista sort of agrees. She's just saying like that's what photographers do, right? Here they tell us to pose a certain way, and then we hope it's natural. We're sitting there like this, like I never hold my hands like this. But yeah, so
That's
go
only
ahead.
that stuff, by the way, Steve, that stuff's only good if you're a model and you're doing fashion or you're doing beauty or if you're doing some kind of editorial for a product. Yeah. But guess what?
Mhm.
That's not the game we're in, folks.
Yeah, modeling is only a side hustle for me. I get a lot of modeling offers.
Good to
Um,
know.
Will, do you mind just coming off and asking your question? Then I'll have Susie ask hers.
Yeah, this is great stuff. I appreciate you sharing everything so far. I mean, I have a bunch of questions, but I guess kind of one question that kind of sums up a lot probably would be what do top tier speakers do visually rather than just mid to low tier speakers?
So it's I wouldn't even put it as top tier or low tier. I would put aware versus unaware. First of all, I'd reframe that.
Yeah.
Um, but folks that speakers, experts that are aware of the importance of visual authority, they treat their the accumulation of and the deployment of their visual assets as a system. They don't treat it as okay, I'm going to get my headshots done once a year. I'll get one event. I'm hosting an event. Let me get one of those. They think of it as an ever evolving library of images. And they don't just see it as piecemeal here and there. It is a living, breathing ecosystem that constantly is getting updated and not only updated, but used across their various channels, as well as updating their primary touch points, such as their speaker kit, their one sheets, their website, and their profile images. Um, Once you have an understanding that, when the market sees you constantly sharing professional images as well as the smartphone images that are captured by you as well as participants that are in your rooms, it signals relevant, current, premium. It shows people that you're in demand, And that is what you want to do because it helps you stay top of mind with various decision makers, whether it's to get on more stages or have more coaching clients or more contracts, whatever the back end looks like or whatever the stage stuff looks like that you do. You want to constantly share stuff from the professional lens as well as the smartphone lens and do it systematically so that it's organized, it's a well-oiled machine, like a flywheel, basically, is what you want to create. And it takes time to get up to speed, but ultimately, once the system is in place, it then becomes automatic.
Yeah,
That help?
that's great. Yeah, that's
That
great.
helpful?
Yeah, kind of have an A and B to that. So you mentioned smartphone photos. Is
Yes,
that
sir.
could you speak to why those are important? And then the second, this is it's a different question, but the second thing is, what would an aware speaker's first, like they go to the website, the first thing you see, what is an aware speaker having on their first homepage? If you answer those two questions.
Okay, so first image. Okay. Let me take the second one first. So homepage, top of the fold. That's what you're talking about. Um, the way that first of all, it may or may not be photo, it might be video. But the way to think about what that very important real estate needs to be taken up by is this. What do you want to be known for most? You might have 3 to 5 things that are for sale, right? You might have multiple revenue streams, but what is the number one thing you want to lead with? If it's keynote speaking, I want to see a keynote photo, or I want to see a highlight reel video B-roll going. If it's consulting, I want to see what that looks like. If you're a trainer in a boardroom with a whiteboard, slide, flip chart, fill in the blank, we want to see what that looks like. If there's a couple of things that you like to lead with and one leads into the other, then what might make the most sense is having a portrait where you are making direct eye contact, wearing the clothing that you wear in front of people who pay you money, and it exhibits the words that illustrate how you want to be seen by your audience, as well as aspects of your personality. The long story short is there is no one right way to do anything other than if you want to be known for something primarily lead with that. Okay. Now, second piece, you mentioned smartphone photos. Why is that important? Well, unless you are Gary Vaynerchuk, you do not have a personal paparazzi following you around 24/7. However, high impact moments, insightful moments, important day to day things happen throughout your work week, and you don't have a professional lens to capture it. But you got this bad boy sitting in your pocket 24/7. As a result, when things are happening in your world, snap a photo of it. And when, for example, I just actually had this conversation earlier today with a colleague and a client of mine. I photographed him doing a MC gig recently, and we were talking about how best to leverage his photos. Now, I brought up this idea of smartphone photography with him and told him that, you know, the key piece is in the way that I captured the stuff of him on the stage, as well as the stuff that happened before he got on the stage, as well as the stuff that happened after he got off the stage, which, by the way, is very important for all of you folks when you are emceeing, delivering a keynote, doing a breakout, doing a panel, fill in the blank. When you hire a professional photographer to follow you around, it is important to capture what it looks like when you do a tech check, when you're going over your slides, when you're talking to the event staff or the AV team, when you're talking to participants beforehand, when you're preparing your speech or rehearsing it or looking at the slides yourself in the green room. All of these things are important to share, as well as on the back end, if you have a book signing, or if you're taking selfies with participants, or if you are having conversations with folks, all of that stuff needs to be captured. And if a professional lens is not there, that's when it's important to snap photos yourself with your phone. Show what, your laptop looks like beforehand with PowerPoint open or whatever program you use for your slide deck. Show the notes that you scribbled down the night before for something that you're going to end up using in the presentation. Show the photo of the empty space. And then during it, encourage your participants to take photos of you and the slides together, and ask them to tag you and capture those and bring those in and have those. And then afterwards, when you're getting the selfies, same thing. Get tagged, download those images, have them all in one place. Why? Because when you are trying to create differentiation from other professionals in your particular space, you want to show people that you prepare, that you care, that you're a team player, and that you create transformation. And when you have all that stuff beforehand and afterwards, that paints the much broader picture. And by getting those photos with a smartphone photo when no one else is around, you are able to share those moments. And truth be told, for most of you, if not all of you, maybe you'll have one or two events captured by a professional photographer, or maybe there'll be one that's in the audience that or that's provided that'll give you like the two photos barely that'll work. You have that, but if you have smartphone photos from yourself, from someone on your team taking photos of you, as well as the participants that are taking the photos of you doing your thing, you now have a body of evidence that you can share all over the place. And that is what helps keep you top of mind with decision makers that might not be ready to bring you in just yet, but they will keep you in mind as the decision process moves forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah, those are great answers. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good stuff. Thanks, John. How about Susie Moon?
Hi there. I'm wondering about AI. Can you tell when somebody uses AI to create an image or a headshot, aside from having six fingers or anything showing? Like a good one from AI. Can you tell?
So here's my thought on that. If you're going to create images of yourself for through AI, don't use it for your professional images ever, or at least for now. Maybe a couple of years from now, it'll become more appropriate. Don't do that now. And here's why. For the time being, people buy from people. And regardless of what your area of expertise is, including myself, everyone in this conversation and everyone watching this is in the business of building relationships. If you're putting your front door through zeros and ones in an artificial way, you're sending the wrong message to them. It's as you might as well use a stock photo of some actor in a boardroom somewhere, like, raising his hand or doing like that fake high five with the other people in the room. It's the same thing. It's not real. It's not genuine. And I strongly discourage anyone for now to not use any AI types of images as your headshots, your primary images for your speaker kit, or on your website. Every now and then, if you're going to use an AI image for, say, a thumbnail for an article because it makes sense, sure. But ideally, what would be best is that every image that you use, and I have clients that do this, we create our own customized like stock photography based on the actual business that they are in. And it would be to your best interest to really focus on zoning in on identifying what those images could be and using those. Because in this day and age, in the attention economy we're in the AI slop world that we all live in, people are desperate for real and genuine, especially the younger generations. They're already tired of it. And for those of us who have bridged the gap between the internet and like handwriting notes to people, it's even more apparent that being yourself from jump is most important because that's the impression you want to leave with people, that you're a real person and that you are confident and stand in front of your brand, stand in front of your logo, and you stand in front of that tagline and the promise that you make with your people to transform them in the way you do.
And that would be great if they could apply that to all the dating apps too, just FYI.
Let me tell you something. I could not agree more. There was this one time where I went on a date with someone, and I couldn't tell back then. I really wasn't paying attention. I don't know who the hell showed up, but it sure as hell wasn't that person. It is obnoxious. And but again, life is business. It's the same thought. And I don't think it's a bad thing to screw around with those photos and have some fun with it and like make a post about it. In fact, I think it's a nice way to break it up and showcase some of your flair and your personality and your secret sauce. That's great. But when you're leading with it, no, don't do that. Be you.
Susie, did that answer your question? Perfect. All right, Krista, if you can come off mute and ask yours.
She raised her hand. That was cool. I see the little.
She knows the deal.
The guys are fancy.
Yeah, Alt Y on Windows. If so my question is, if you do hire a photographer, rather than doing poses and whatnot, what would you recommend doing with that person versus if you ask someone to take smartphone photos of you?
Well, as I had mentioned before, when you're, regardless of what you're doing in front of the camera, uh, if it's an image where it's a portrait and you're looking directly into the camera, the key thing is if you're like say leaning against the wall, how would you lean against the wall? What would you do with your hands? Do that. You don't this is by the way, a very defensive pose, and you don't want to ever do this in your photos. If you ever cross your arms, the closest thing you could do is something like this, and that still looks weird. I just tell people don't don't cross your arms. It feels very blocked off and very defensive. But
Well, I mean, I usually just have my hands at my sides or on the keyboard, or I mean, sometimes I'll kind of cross my arms like that. But other than that, unless I'm doing a particular gesture, I don't have poses that I do.
by the
So
way, you mentioned keyboard. By any chance, do you mean having the laptop at a 45-degree angle? You have one hand on the laptop and then you're looking into the camera kind of thing?
no,
Good.
I mean sitting back like this with the keyboard
Okay. Um, okay.
or with the laptop, straight on like this.
So if you're being photographed professionally behind the scenes, like during a branding session while you're working on your laptop, yeah, you don't pay attention to the camera. And essentially what you want to be captured doing is three different things. One, reading. So and this is what I tell my people when they're in front of the camera. It's like, okay, you're reading an article that you just wrote, or you're reading a very important email. What are you doing? There was a guy a couple of
So you're
weeks ago.
just saying like do the things for real.
Yeah, like
Like actually open the email, actually read it and have the photographer do a candid shot instead of
yeah, you could have a real email, and if that helps to trigger the real movement, or you can fake it as long as the photographer isn't shooting what is actually on the screen. But the thought is if you're reading, I told my client to read, and he was like, okay. So then he did like this weird pose where he's leaning on the table and he has his hand back here. And I was like, that's the most real thing I've ever seen while not shooting someone in real life doing, which, I've done that too, like people working and didn't realize I was photographing them. But in that case, it was the most real thing he did. And then not just reading, but then typing. So typing and then looking at the screen, however that looks. And then the third thing is like thinking to yourself, like as you read something, then you look off into the distance, like what would you do with your hands? Like, do you do this? Do you
Nothing.
do this? Do
I
you
don't
do...
do anything.
That's
I'm
fine
pretty
too.
boring pose-wise,
No,
really.
and that's see, but that's the th it's not posing, it's your body language, and that's okay. There are people that I have photographed where they're like, I sit here and they put the two hands right on the table, flat like this, and I shot them like that. Why? Because it felt the most natural to them, and ultimately. That is what matters. We're not trying to get you in some kind of cute
Oh,
little
okay.
pose or whatever, or this or that. It doesn't matter. Although I will tell you that I have shot people doing that because guess what? That's how they read or that's how they listen to people when they're in a conversation. They do this. Or
So
they
I guess the bottom line is it a good idea then to ask for a photographer who's strong in candid shots if you don't want poses?
The photographer that you want to hire is the one that you have rapport with. That's where it begins and ends. And what that means is regardless of their portfolio or their price tag, you connect with them on a human being level because if you are able to communicate, that's level one, and we'll get to level two after. But when you're working with someone in this kind of dynamic, in front of the camera, behind the camera, you have to be comfortable with that person on a level that allows you to drop your guard and be yourself and feel like despite this being an unnatural experience, it still feels natural and you're comfortable because you trust that that person has your best interests in mind. So,
So maybe
you,
that's it. Maybe it's, can you make this experience feel natural? How natural can you make this experience? Because if it's not natural to me, I'll probably look fake.
not probably, you will look fake, you'll hate the photos. But here's the second piece to this. That human being part is the front door. And then the second half of it is the fact that they understand what you need, have worked with people like you before, and have a track record. Because if they don't, you don't want to bring in a wedding photographer to shoot your branding photos or even capture your events. You don't, in the same way that you don't bring an electrician in to unclog your sink. We, yes, all use cameras, but we are not all the same. And when thinking about positioning yourself as an authority figure, there are very specific types of images captured in specific ways that need to happen for you in order to help support all of your business goals. Whatever those opportunities or higher fees or whatever the case may be that you're trying to grow in the short term as well as moving forward. So, yes, you have to have that connection with them, and they need to know what the hell they're doing with someone like you. Those two things must work in concert with each other. And then that way, that will help ensure that you get the results that you really need to be able to support your business. Because one thing, if nobody walks away with nothing but this, I'm just going to share it. Um, you don't want to work with someone that just makes pretty photos. You need to work with people that are the collaborators in your success because you're not going for nice to haves. You're going for business infrastructure. That is what you are capturing. It is that important. In the same way that your speaker reel carries a lot of weight, all of your photos, not just for online content, not just for your speaker kit, not just for your website, every single touch point online as well as offline must be aligned so that people can get the sense that you are operating at the level at which you say you are. Does that make sense? Good.
Did that answer your questions, Krista?
Yeah. Although the other part of it was a smartphone piece, but
The smartphone?
Go
Oh,
ahead.
yeah, like
why?
photographer versus smartphone. And forgive me, I have to shut the video to plug my laptop in, but I am listening.
So the smartphone photos, I mean, honestly, there's a lot of creative latitude with that in the sense that you don't need to have an image taken with a camera phone to resemble that of a professional image. What's most important there is the proof that someone was in that audience and that you inspired them enough to actually take the photo of you while you were in action. And that carries a lot of weight because it's from the vantage point of the people that you serve. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. I mean, obviously, the photo needs to be in focus. It can't look like it was shot in the middle of a cave and or in the middle of like some kind of light bath where you're barely recognizable. There needs to be some level of adherence to decent exposure and composition and that kind of thing. But the truth is, if the photo was taken during the middle of your presentation, then it's a valid photo and it carries a lot of weight because it wasn't taken by you or by someone that you hired. It was taken by someone that you inspired, and that's very important.
Oh,
Wait,
there you
what?
go,
This
Krista.
is a new concept to me. I'm so sorry to ask, but you're saying to like ask random people in the audience to take your photos? I've never heard a speaker ask that.
Actually, I've been in rooms where not only is that the case, but what they've done is they've created a QR code where you could scan it and upload the photos. If it's your event, you definitely do that. Um, but the other thing is, it's not saying, "Hey, everybody, take a picture of me," but it's more along the lines of, asking them to tag you or you could do it in a way where when you're at the end and they do the talkadot thing, if you have all of your handles just on there without addressing it, people are and you left an impression on them, they're going to follow you. I know because I've done it myself as a photographer in rooms where I'm like, who the hell is that person? Because I'm there to photograph someone else, and you just follow them. But the thing is, if it's something where they have your information, they're going to tag you and be like, "Oh my God, that was amazing." The key thing is that you collect those images and have them in a library so that you then can use them when you want. And then that way, like I said, it helps fill in the gaps when a professional photographer is not there.
All right. Will.
Yeah, I have another question. It kind of has to do with kind of like design, photos, and things like that, but also just advice on like reaching out to people. So, I work with a lot of sports teams in the areas. I've done about 12. I'll do at least 15 to 20 by the end of the year. But I do a lot of cold emailing, and to be honest, it just hasn't worked. So I'll kind of explain myself, my website link, and I don't feel like the website is bad. Obviously, I'm learning a lot still.
Mhm.
But I'm just wondering if I've gotten way more responses when it's more of a personal like outreach. If I find a kid on the team that knows the coach, whatever. One response I got from a coach recently, he said, "Oh, I saw your emails. It's hard to tell sometimes between like a spam email and a personal email." So I was just wondering if you think cold emails are effective if you have a good, website and photography and just kind of image brand, or do you think there's a better way to do it?
Um, I'm definitely the wrong person to ask there because 99% of my work comes through direct referral. I don't cold outreach anybody. I tried that very early on, and then, especially on LinkedIn, you get the good old, "Hey, do you want to be on a board, or do you want to pay $1,000 so I can write an article about you that no one's ever going
You
to
want to speak
read?"
in London?
Yeah. I mean, I guess my answer to your question is, how do you feel when someone out of the blue just randomly hits you up? Do you
Like
like it?
suspect or kind of, yeah, like kind of not sure.
I mean, what what I've learned in the 11 years that I have been on my own, going on 12, is the best way to get people's attention is not to bombard their email. It's either A, you find the side door because someone you know knows them and you can get an introduction, or B, um, you can do a little bit of light engagement in terms of following their content and leaving thoughtful messages, or C, reaching out and complimenting them and not asking for something, or asking for their input on something, and create an opportunity where you're showing, hey, you know who I am, you appreciate what I do, and you're actually asking me for my opinion on something without any, hey, can you hire me? And you can just let the relationship kind of develop from there. That's kind of the stuff that I've done in the past. And one of the things that I have as a feather in my cap is if I'm photographing an event, and there's someone that I want to communicate with outside of that event, and I know who they are and I have their email, I'm like, hey, here's 4 or 5 photos I shot of you when you were doing X, Y, and Z. Just want you to have them. No requirement of reciprocity needed, but it's something that they remember. So I would approach it from those vantage points as opposed to just blasting people's email because nobody likes that shit.
Yeah, well, maybe if we have time, we can hang on after when John's out. We can talk a little more about the outreach side of it, because that is sort of that and speaker fees is sort of the bane of all of our existence is how to
Right.
how to handle all of that stuff. I've got a question. If you guys have questions, feel free to, yeah, again, raise your hand, put it in the chat or whatever. But one question I have for you, John, we talked about this a little bit in NSA Minnesota, but should I be thinking about images differently depending on the platform in which they are used? Like, I love the idea of catching the authentic self and, all of that stuff and being real and all of that. But like, should I think about in terms of at least collecting images and using them, website versus one sheet, or, our media kit or social media or the picture they use in the program? Like, or do we just, is it all just sort of, should all just be the same sort of idea?
So, um, the first thing that I think we should probably talk about is what the library actually looks like. Is it okay if I share my screen?
I'd love that. Yeah, that was one of my questions too, is how do you manage a mega library of,
Hold
yeah,
on, let me go full
you should have
screen.
access to share.
We're gonna find out right now.
Yeah, I guess I'll give you permission if you don't. There you go.
Now
Yep,
you
it's
can you,
there.
you so that is the Visual Authority Library in whole. And basically, if you notice, there are 3 primary categories that feed into that library. And by that, I mean core assets, visual evidence, and missing details. The core assets are the aforementioned headshots and the portraits, the stuff where you're looking into the camera. The visual evidence images are the photos that are capturing you in the act of doing what you do, whether it is the work that you do before the work, the solo work, the researching, the brainstorming, whatever that looks like, as well as the stuff that happens in front of the clients who pay you money, whether it's on a stage, in a boardroom, on a screen, over the phone, fill in the blank, whatever that is. That's what visual evidence is. And those images are acquired through professional photos and smartphone photos, as we've already discussed. And then the third component is the missing details. Those are the yes and photos that help paint the broader picture. And there are 2 different types of missing details that we're talking about. We have the professional signals, which are for authors in the audience, your books. For experts, it's your IP, your frameworks, it's any awards that you have earned over the years. Basically, the professional signals are credibility builders that help cement in the whole visual evidence piece that we talked about. And then the second part to the missing details is the personal touches. That's your secret sauce, the stuff that really, really shows people who you are, your essence. And that is generally images that are outside of the work itself. So it's the causes that you stand for, the community work, family, hobbies, you know, fill in the blank of whatever that looks like for you that is very important to you, A, and B, that you are willing to share those moments with your audience, so that you can be more relatable and be more of a human being and help, again, support this people buy from people idea and being in the business of building relationships. The missing details go a long way in adding that credibility on the professional end and painting the broader picture on the personal end. And when it comes to the different types of images that you use in different places, well, if we look at the core assets, there are several prescribed areas that you use those headshots. In fact, do I have, I, th hold on, like these types of images, these headshots, right? And wider portraits and vertical portraits. These are the types of images that you use for the speaker kit. These are the types of images for your social profiles, for different parts of your website, for bureau pages. Fill in the blank of where you need to directly connect with people and you need these kinds of images. Um, and then for the visual evidence, like this is the kind of stuff that you use that shows the work before the work, whether you're working on your laptop, voice recording, writing in a notebook, using a tablet, thinking to yourself, virtual meetings with your team, typing, or this one, which is pretty cool, where they're whiteboarding and brainstorming at the same time. This was actually taken during a branding shoot, but it was a real moment that they had. So it was cool because everything they were doing was legit. And it came off that way in the photos that I gave them from that. And then I mentioned the before stuff. And by the way, these types of images are ideal, Steve, for online content. It's ideal for um, maybe for carousels or for reels, or let's say, for example, this image where you see all this negative space here. Maybe what you do is you put a quote or a phrase or something that is meaningful that ties back to your expertise. And that then becomes a quote post that you can then elaborate on that quote, that phrase, that word you put in that negative space in that shot in the caption. So you could create stuff there. Same thing with these types of images, the before stuff, showing the space, rehearsing, going over stuff with the AV team, details in the room, the materials that you're using for your, let's say you're throwing an event, that kind of stuff. Prepping your speech is this shot, talking with the event organizers, you know, and then the during stuff, speaking, close ups, wide shots, reactions of the participants, showing the space, screens in person, one on ones. It's all here, all that stuff. And then afterwards, debriefing with everyone, hugs from participants, book signings. This is a fun one, an event. I don't know if you guys know Phil Jones, but
Yep.
that was pretty fun to shoot in December. Happy hours that you host or taking selfies with participants. These are the kinds of things that can be used again for stuff like online content. And the other thing for a lot of these, surprisingly, for some clients, what they'll do is instead of creating just like graphics for all of their pages, what they'll do to break up the text is use a collection of these before and after shots to kind of, for their speaker pages specifically. They'll use that. Or if it's your own event, you can use the images for a one sheet to use to promote that particular event. The long story short is there's a lot of creative flexibility with regards to where to use all of these photos once you have an understanding of the types of photos that you have. Because either A, you're going to do this by yourself and kind of mix and match and play with it, or B, you're going to have a wealth of assets to hand off to a designer and other people that you're working with as creative vendors, and you're giving them the flexibility to kind of experiment and play. But the whole thing is to have a variety of these images and use them all over the place, because if you're stuck using the same 2 to 3 photos, it sends the wrong signal to people, because it looks like you're cheap or that you're not working a lot. And subconsciously, that helps to silently disqualify you from consideration. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's so good. I know we're almost at time already, which is crazy. Just real quick, do you have like maybe this outside of the scope of your expertise, but like all these photos, all these videos too, but like are there speakers or do you have a process of how people actually store these or tag them or title them or to find them again? Like if we are really diligent taking all these professional and personal photos and all of that stuff, it just feels like okay, they just get lost somewhere and like how do we find them again? Maybe I'm too old to really know a good system, but is there any like the 1 minute sort of tip on how to
Yeah.
manage all of these?
Yeah. The first thing, so it's not obvious to you, but I have hundreds of thousands of photos over the course of a decade. So I have a pretty tight run system. But the simplest way to describe it is this: whether you get photos from someone you hire or handoffs from people that are in the events in which you are speaking, I would date the folder chronologically, and I would so just use the date and then dash whatever the event was, and then you do that consistently for every single one, so they line up chronologically and nice and easy. That's number one. Number two, I would take the branding images that you get, the headshots, the wider portraits, all that stuff, and separate it from the event stuff. And then number three, one of the things that I've started to suggest to clients after getting a lot of feedback is, let's say you do hire somebody and you end up with, I don't know, 3, 4, 500 photos. It is extremely overwhelming. There's
Mhm.
paralysis of choice, there's decision fatigue, all the bad things. One way to kind of combat that is this: commit to taking at least 1 to 2 hours within the span of a day or two after the session. If you, when you have time and nothing else is going on, you commit to looking at every single picture that is in that main portfolio. And what you do is you create a favorites folder. And if it's a core asset, or if it's a visual evidence, or if it's a missing detail image, based on what we talked about, you create those three subfolders within the favorites folder for that particular project. And instead of picking 300 out of the 500, go in there and impulsively say to yourself, I like this one. I don't like that. Don't like that. Don't like that. I love that one. Like that one. No, 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 no. Just pick 10, 15, 30 of these photos and put it in the corresponding folder, whether it's the headshots or the stuff of you on the stage or the stuff of your book or whatever it is, and categorize them so that you have a subset of ones that you have already approved. Why? Because instead of sending a social media person or a website designer or a videographer who needs thumbnail images, everything, and you end up getting a photo that you may or may not like that much, you're handing them a subset and say, start with these. And if these photos work, that part is done. And as those photos get used, you go back in and rinse and repeat that process. So instead of going in and having to look for 10,000 photos, you're now going in to replenish the favorites folder. And if in the initial beginning of that process and they're looking through these images and can't find something that they actually need, they need something a little more specific, they're going to give you specifics. And instead of going in and trying to like, where the hell do I start? You now have a game plan. So you're going in and trying to find that one type of image that works best. And then you can send that off to that person. But the whole goal of that is to minimize friction. because ultimately that is the biggest enemy of folks like you with all of those images. Like, what the hell am I supposed to do with all of this? But
Mhm.
if you break it down systematically like that, that gives you a better opportunity to be able to use way more of the images moving forward.
Good stuff. Yeah, that's what I always struggle with. Like, how to, is it by date, by event, or by headshot versus B-roll versus book signing? Like, so that's my issue, but that's super helpful. It's a great way to kind of start thinking about the structure.
Three main subsections,
Yeah.
by date, give me a little blurb of what it is, create the favorites in each of them, rinse and repeat that process until you decide to retire.
Right. All right. So we are at time. John, I put your website out there. Do you care if I put your LinkedIn link out there as well?
It,
What else do people need to know about you or what you do or how to connect, or maybe some people want to hire you? I don't know. What should people know about connecting with you?
well, I cry a lot. I guess we don't really need to get into
Was
that.
that in your dating app? Was that part of the dating app profile?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the best way to contact me, I would say, is LinkedIn, definitely. John A. DeMato, you find me. I look like my photo, so that's not too hard. I do have a newsletter on LinkedIn as well as on my website, johndemato.com, where I put out a pretty lengthy article once a week and I blabber on about visual authority till the cows come home if you want to learn more about that. And if you have any questions with regards to any of the stuff that we talked about, just give me a shout and we'll set something up. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right, John, you are awesome. Thank you, man. Time just flies. I'm sure we all have a bunch more questions, but great stuff. Seriously, appreciate it.
Hey, not a problem. Now you guys can go talk crap about me. I
Now we'll
will
talk
get
about
out of
your
here.
crying and stuff. Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Have
We'll
a
chat
good day,
later.
everybody.
Thanks, John.
Bye.
All right. I am going to stop recording.